Deep in the South American rainforests of the country of Guyana, in regions so remote that they are accessible only by canoe or bush planes, native Amur Indians live almost untouched by modern technology. Survival requires long days of hard work in the dense jungle fields. Because of their remoteness, simple, treatable illnesses or medical emergencies usually end in death. Fortunately for some of the villages in Guyana, this is changing, thanks to an air ambulance program sponsored in part by ADRA.
We took the whole family, all our children, all 5 kids, and we moved into 200 miles into the jungles of Guyana. One of the difficult points about Guyana is its isolated areas. Guyana has very few roads. Its rivers are filled with rapids and with waterfalls. So you can't really navigate very far by water. And you have these high mountains that look kind of like Monument Valley, little mountains sticking straight up all over the place, separating big canyons and rivers and so on. The rivers that wind through these canyons are filled with little villages, very tight runways, and it takes a specialized aircraft prepared for bush flying with a big engine and a special wing to be able to land on these short strips. It's hazardous flying. It's certainly not for novice or new pilots. And the word has spread throughout all of Guyana. It's the only aviation program in the country that is not a non-commercial basis. There are probably at least 70 villages in Guyana's interior that can only be reached by an airplane. Medical care, education is very difficult to achieve. The impact is tremendous. We go in when they call for help, for emergencies. I'm a registered nurse, so I provide primary care, emergency care, then I fly them to the government hospital. We bring them back after they're better, after they've received medical care.
Emelita Thompson lives in Parima with her 6 children. In 1998, she became very ill. The local clinic in the village did not know what was wrong and could not help her.
Mr. Gates examined me and determined that I had appendicitis. He took me in his plane to the emergency room at the hospital in Georgetown and worked very hard to help me. He saved my life.
I was sick with diabetes. I couldn't eat. I leave all my food. I couldn't drink. I didn't want to drink, or no, I didn't want to take nothing.
During that time, Buddy Gates came over, and I went to talk with him, see if he can help us out to Georgetown. He immediately said, bring her across, and then we'll fly tomorrow. I told him that we don't have any money. He said he will help us.
I couldn't walk. He had to carry me in the wheelbarrow. They had to fetch me out like a small child and put me in the plane. And there I was.
The doctor worked to see the condition of my wife, and even though she was very serious, about to die, they helped her. And whatever need we were in need of, the Gates assisted us.
I'm very happy for Gates, who really take interest over me, to take me to the hospital. And that is why right now I am alive. And I say thank you to God to send a man like Gates to help Amur Indians in this community.
As I have been working the last 3 years as ADRA director, I have concentrated on volunteer workers. We have 10 full-time volunteer workers through ADRA, ranging from retired physicians to dentists to engineers to college students.
We are helping the young people in this area who only get a government primary schooling. When they finish their primary, they finish in about a grade 6. So what we're trying to do is breach that gap for those students who want to continue their education in a higher learning institute. So this gives them a chance to keep their mind active and teach them a skill. We work them very hard. They work half day in the morning. We have them working on the farm and around the compound and kitchen duty and cleaning. And then in the afternoon, teaching them the simple academics, math, science, English, even some social studies, some languages. We're trying to give them a variety of things and write someday their CXC, which is similar to what we would call a GED, high school diploma, so that they can continue their higher education.
There are probably around 40 or 50 villages just in just the one part of Guyana that desperately need to be provided for. All they're asking for is opportunity. They sent in a couple of captains to see me at Kaikan one time. They walked for 7 days just to make an invitation, an appeal. Could you please come and do for us what you're doing here for them? That was a year and a half ago, almost 2 years. We are taking definite steps, making decisions to be able to provide for that.
Thanks to your generous support, more villages of Guyana will be served by this wonderful program. Every day, in countries all over the world, ADRA is reaching out to the poor, the sick, the forgotten peoples of the world. With community programs of health, education, agricultural training, and income generation, ADRA is helping people to live happier, safer, more secure lives. Thank you for your ongoing support of the programs of ADRA.
We love this Christian life. I am very happy to be a Christian. I don't want to be out from Christian life. I want to be in the full of Jesus and in Christian life. That is very important in our community.
We enjoy living as Christians because it has helped us in many ways. One, it teaches us about how to care our body, and it teaches us about the second coming of Christ, and it teaches us how to live with others peacefully.
Deep in the South American rainforests of the country of Guyana, in regions so remote that they are accessible only by canoe or bush planes, visitors may be surprised to discover whole villages of Amur Indians who have discovered the joy of living the Christian life.
Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away.
How they came to know about Christ is a dramatic fulfillment of the prophecy of Joel, when he said that in those days your old men shall dream dreams.
Many years ago, before I was born, one of the elders of our village had a dream. In that dream, a being full of light told the elder about the creation of the world, about the Sabbath day, about the plan of salvation, and the second coming of Jesus. You must get ready, the angel said. Very soon a white man will come to your village carrying a black book. He will teach you more about these things.
He saw a man in a vision, a white man with the black book in his hand. And he told the people about what he saw in a vision. And not too long, the minister, his name is Elder Davis, came to Monteraima with his black book.
And when he came, he didn't understand their reaction, because they were jumping and laughing and singing and shouting. And finally they told him the dream.
The villagers accepted the teachings of the Black Book and were so happy that Elder Davis had come to teach them that they adopted his name and are now known as the Davis Indians. Since that time, other missionaries have also worked among the Davis Indians. But in the late 1960s, a new communistic-style government took power in Guyana, and the missionaries had to leave. Only recently has the way opened up again for the Davis Indians through the ministry of David Gates.
Early in life, I became aware that God had something special for me. I was born with intestinal atresia, which means the intestines were in pieces. There was no longitudinal nerve, there was no peristalsis. In the first 2 weeks of my life, I was operated on major abdominal surgery 3 times. They were unable to repair it after anastomosing, connecting everything together, taking out half of my stomach. They finally admitted that the surgeon said, there is no way this child can live, so prepare for the funeral. My parents, my dad who was in seminary, my mother was a nursing instructor at Emmanuel Missionary College in those days, had me anointed, and immediately my whole abdomen flipped around. All the intestines fell into the right place. Nerves that I didn't have when I was born began functioning, and I've had normal digestion all my life. So I became aware early in life that God had separated me for something special. As the years progressed, my parents raised me in Bolivia, myself and my 2 brothers and 1 sister, in the jungles. I developed an enjoyment for mission aviation, for missionary work. After 10 years in Bolivia, we returned back to the U.S. Now, another missionary family that was in Bolivia at the time was the Dirksen family, and the oldest Dirksen girl, Becky Dirksen, was my favorite friend, and when I was 8 years old, I proposed to her. And she promised to marry me when she got older. 10 years went by, and we met each other again, and she was still holding firm. She'd had 2 other proposals. She said, no, I'm already taken. So the Lord was very good to us, and we went through nursing together. We were married, and after finishing college and my aviation studies, we promptly left to serve in Peru. We served in Peru for 3 or 4 years, then we went to Mexico for some time. We went to the States to study aviation maintenance, back to Peru for 6 years, and then ended up in the Caribbean Union, in Trinidad and Tobago, as Director of Computer Services for the Caribbean Union, and teaching as an assistant professor for Caribbean Union College. I have to admit that that was a preparation job. I believe the Lord was preparing us for a wider service that we're doing today, because a lot of my students are now in positions of leadership. I traveled widely throughout the Caribbean Union, visiting administrators, institutions, and developed a series of rapport and confidence with my leaders, which now I am building upon. One of the places I visited quite frequently was Guyana. 2 to 3 times a year, I would travel to Guyana, set up the accounting system, help close the books, write software, network their computers for the hospital and the conference office, as I did for all the rest of the union institutions. I took students with me, and we would work together. They would get practical experience as well. On one of those trips, I was invited by the conference administration to accompany them into the interior. I visited the villages of Parima and Kaikan, and I was surprised by what I heard. I found out that these were the Davis Indians I had always heard about, but I didn't know where they were. I had heard about God bringing the message to them via an angel, and how they had obeyed the angel, and how when the mission president at that time, Elder Davis, O.E. Davis, made a trip into the interior, he found them already keeping the Sabbath and a vegetarian diet. They knew about the health message, and that was very impressive to me. And as I heard them appeal for a missionary, for 30 years they had not had a missionary in Kaikan, and they invited me. I fell in love with that invitation. I went home to Trinidad and told my wife, and she immediately wanted to go too. We were getting ready after 16 years of overseas service to take a permanent return. Our children were about ready for college, and we were planning to go home anyhow. So I discussed it with my union administration, my college administration, and the conference in Guyana, and they agreed that it would be a good idea. They had no budget for it, but it would be a good idea to be able to open up the work in that interior again. So we requested a permanent return, but instead of going home to the States, we took the whole family, all our children, all 5 kids, and we moved into 200 miles into the jungles of Guyana. It was a scary experience, I can tell you. I felt like I had jumped off of a cliff because we were not receiving paychecks anymore. And we wanted to experience what George Mueller, what Hudson Taylor had experienced. God providing. We would not raise funds, we would just work, and if we went hungry, we would go home, if God was unable to take care of our needs. Well, the 1 year that we dedicated to do that has now stretched into 4 years, and God has been faithful. One of Hudson Taylor's favorite memory verses and promises is 1 Thessalonians 5:24. He who has called you is faithful, and he will do it. And we have certainly found that to be true. We started out living on the food that the people brought us. My brother and sister-in-law came to join us. They are also, both are registered nurses. And my in-laws came for a short period also. And we had a family project going there, but all the food that we had no income at all. Kept coming in. People would bring cassava, bananas, and all the vegetables they could, different types of roots and so on, and we were able to live that way. But then it was time to buy medicines. What to do about medicines? That cost cash. So we took our small amount of savings and invested it to buy medicines. The next month, a visitor came and doubled the amount of money we had spent. They left the money there for us. So the next month, we spent most of that on medicines. And immediately, the following month, it doubled again. And we begin to see a trend here. As we gave, we received. And Desire of Ages, on the chapter, Give Ye Them to Eat, says, in the very act of imparting, we receive. I've come to believe that with all my heart. And so I'm not afraid of spending at all, because in the very act of spending, I know God is already multiplying it to return it. And so we started giving almost everything we received, to the point where it was $200 and $400 and $500 and $1,000 and $2,000, and it keeps going like that. Now it's approximately $10,000 a month that God has provided to keep the projects going. One of the difficult points about Guyana is its isolated areas. Guyana has very few roads. Its rivers are filled with rapids and with waterfalls. So you can't really navigate very far by water. And you have these high mountains that look kind of like Monument Valley. Little mountains sticking straight up all over the place, separating big canyons and rivers and so on, and little villages tucked down inside the canyons. The rivers that wind through these canyons are filled with little villages, very tight runways, and it takes a specialized aircraft prepared for bush flying with a big engine and a special wing to be able to land on these short strips. It's hazardous flying. It's certainly not for novice or new pilots. But God has been very kind to us, and He's allowed us to reach a lot of these villages, and the word has spread throughout all of Guyana. It's the only aviation program in the country that is not a non-commercial basis. So we're left with 400 miles wide and 700 miles deep of basically unreachable area except by foot, which is extremely hazardous, or by airplane. There are probably at least 70 villages in Guyana's interior that can only be reached by an airplane. Medical care, education is very difficult to achieve. When we made the decision to buy an aircraft that could fly over those mountains and canyons and 200 miles of solid jungle to be able to reach one little village, the impact is tremendous. We go in when they call for help, for emergencies. I'm a registered nurse, so I provide primary care, emergency care, then I fly them to the government hospital. We bring them back after they're better, after they've received medical care.
Emelita Thompson lives in Parima with her 6 children. In 1998, she became very ill. The local clinic in the village did not know what was wrong and could not help her.
Elder Gates examined me and determined that I had appendicitis. He took me in his plane to the emergency room at the hospital in Georgetown and worked very hard to help me. He saved my life.
Jesus have done many wonderful things to me to be alive right now. I cannot get up. I couldn't eat. I leave all my food. I couldn't drink. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to take nothing.
During that time, Brother Gates came over, and I went to talk with him, see if he can help us out to Georgetown. He immediately said, bring her across, and then we'll fly tomorrow. I told him that we don't have any money. He said he will help us, and he even told me that I have to go to accompany her.
I couldn't walk. He had to carry me in the wheelbarrow. They had to fetch me out like a small child and put me in the plane. And there I was, and we left early in the morning to Georgetown.
And there, the doctor worked to see the condition of my wife, and even though she was very serious, about to die, they helped her. And whatever need we were in need of, Brother Gates assisted us. So we are very much thankful for Brother Gates, the service that he is doing.
I'm very happy for Gates, who really take interest over me to take me to the hospital, and that is why right now I am alive. And I say thank you to God to send a man like Elder Gates to help Amerindians in this community. So I say thank you for that.
The doors are open. Once you provide medical work, we don't ask any questions. What denomination, what religion you belong to. We just provide the medical care. If there are religious leaders in the community, we invite them to have a word of prayer for the patient. And that builds confidence. It breaks down prejudice. As soon as we ask permission to bring in our Bible workers, they immediately say yes, no problem. You love us so much, we would love you. And it's been a tremendous result. One of the things that, of course, we really depend upon is the development and education of local native workers. That's why we built our school. The secondary industrial school at Parima, the Davis Indian Industrial College, has been functioning for 2 years. We're now in our 3rd year. And one of the most exciting events that I'm just so thrilled about is the idea of a Bible worker training school. We are now in our 2nd batch of training Bible workers, where people, mature students, some married couples, come in and train for 6 months. They go through all the Bible doctrines. They go through training methods. They go through witnessing, personal witnessing methods. And then they go as volunteer missionaries, credentialed by the conference office, into these areas. Stipends are given to them through the conference from donated funds. And they go out working under the regular Bible workers into completely unentered villages. And since they're Amerindian themselves, it doesn't take a special government permit to live among the Indians. They are qualified as native workers to live in any village they want. So they go to these villages, they will live there, and imagine this scenario. You give them a radio. You give them basic health care training so they can deal with emergencies. And you tell them, anytime you have an emergency, give us a call on the radio. and the airplane will come. So here you have this simple, humble, native Bible worker. He comes into a village, has no Adventist work in it. He begins to give teaching, health care, and as soon as there's an emergency, he calls on the radio and he calls for the airplane. Immediately, the airplane leaves and arrives at that village to take care of that patient. Can you imagine the influence that one person will have? Only the rich people can afford that. And so this one person, who's the Bible worker, suddenly becomes the main center of attention for the village, and they depend and love that person because of what he can do. That builds the influence of the work as well. So it is no wonder that the church is growing so much. Training, the secret is training native Bible workers and healthcare workers.
We teach them everything: gardening, first aid, health. I'm going heavy on the sanctuary services and the plan of salvation, Bible doctrines, evangelism, giving them practical instruction in going out and doing visitation, holding evangelistic meetings, and things like this. First course, we had 9 people. 7 of them are out in the villages teaching the people. And we're thrilled because the response of the villages is magnificent.
A very vital link, which I really have been grateful for, is ADRA. ADRA asked me about 3 years ago to become the ADRA director for Guyana. Now, here I was, a volunteer in the interior, receiving no pay, but I was beginning to enjoy the dependence on the Lord. And I was wondering if ADRA would allow me to be a director, even as a volunteer. I'd never seen that. I'd been a denominational employee all my life. My father and my grandfather are ordained ministers. Would the church allow an ADRA director who would not even be a church employee? Well, I presented it to the conference. It went to the union. It went to the division. And at all levels, it was approved. It caught me by surprise, I have to admit. That's not normal. And as I have been working the last 3 years as ADRA director, as a volunteer, I have concentrated on volunteer workers. We have 10 full-time volunteer workers through ADRA, ranging from retired physicians to dentists to engineers to college students.
5:14, if we ask anything according to His will.
It was definitely the Holy Spirit, because I needed to commit my life to the Lord. And I asked Him, if I were to give a year volunteer service anywhere, where would you send me? And through many different things, I ended up here in Guyana. Now I'm the acting principal of DIIC. DIIC stands for Davis Indian Industrial College. And we are helping the young people in this area who only get a government primary schooling. When they finish their primary, they finish in about a grade 6. So what we're trying to do is breach that gap for those students who want to continue their education in a higher learning institute. So this gives them a chance to keep their mind active and teach them a skill. We work them very hard. They work half day in the morning. We have them working on the farm and around the compound and kitchen duty and cleaning. They're very busy. And then in the afternoon, we're trying to teach them many different subjects. Right now we have missionaries coming from all over, teaching them the simple academics, math, science, English, even some social studies, some languages, religion. We're trying to give them a variety of things and write someday their CXC, which is similar to what we would call a GED, high school diploma, so that they can continue their higher education.
One of our strengths in this ADRA volunteer program is student missionaries. There's something about living on the front lines and trusting God for the very food that you eat that changes your life. Southern Adventist University has been the one institution that has taken on this project with enthusiasm. Last year they sent 5. This year we have 6. But I got a feeling that very soon we'll be having 10. But that's only one educational institution. What about other colleges and universities? The student missionary program is a very important program, and I want to appeal. Perhaps you, as a college student watching today, would be interested in serving as a student missionary. If you have that opportunity, and if God calls you, choose some place in the world. It doesn't have to be Guyana. Maybe it can be Africa, Europe, Asia, but wherever it is, take the advantage to become a student missionary for 1 year. Change the world. Take the risk. Launch out and do the unheard of. That's where all the fun is. That's where all the reward is. Job satisfaction is the highest among our group. We have a very wonderful team of missionaries. Very close, very spiritual. We want the best of the best. God's work deserves the best. If you feel called to do that, and you know God is stirring your heart to do that, I would like to invite you to be a student missionary. If you're a student, if you're already a professional, take some time out from your busy work. You don't have to be retired. Just set aside some of your business interests, if you can, and take 3 or 4 months, maybe even a month. If you're already retired or you have some time, you're your own boss, you would like to take more time, come for a year. Offer your skills. Every profession can be of use. There's a place for you in God's front line. The weather, you're in control of the weather. We ask you to work it out so that we can accomplish all the difficult work that we have to do today. At this very moment, we are working with the purchase of 2 aircraft, far beyond our capability. We're in the process of trying to build 8 TV stations. It is unimaginable the amount of money that will take. I have never managed that kind of money before. But why should I be scared? It's not my project. I can sleep well at night. If God wants to close it down, that's not a problem. But if this is His work, then He Himself will provide the resources. There's people out there that have the money, that are willing to give it. They just want God to touch them on the shoulder. I remember one story of a little lady. She was dying of cancer. And she called her doctor and said, 25 years ago, there used to be a boy that used to cut my lawn. He was a 15-year-old boy, and he cut my lawn every week. His name is David Gates. I don't know where David Gates is. I don't know what he's doing. That was 25 years ago. But if you could find him for me, I feel impressed that before I die, the Lord has told me to find him and give him money. So the doctor took 2 years to try to locate me. He found my father finally, called my father. My father remembered the lady and called her up. And she said, "Where is David?" "He's in Guyana." She said, "I want to give a donation. Before I die, I must give some money to his work." "How much do you want?" My dad said, "I'm sorry, David will never tell you how much he wants." "Well, how am I supposed to write you a check?" "Well, the same God who told you to call David should be the one who tells you how much to write." So she wrote a check out for $10,000 and sent the check. The doctor asked my father, "How much did she give you?" And my dad said $10,000 for the project. Very little. She just gave $1 million to her hospital. And she told my dad, "If the Lord ever tells me to give more, I'll give more, and I don't have a problem giving." Well, she hasn't given to this date anymore, and she's still alive. But what it encourages me is, all God has to do is tap her on her shoulder. And $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, she can write the check. But she's just waiting for God to tell her when. So why should I worry about money? There are people that have the money, they're just willing for God to tell them, give it, and they will. So the issue is not worrying about money. The issue is doing our part to move forward in obedience to God's command, and He will provide. There are probably around 40 or 50 villages just in the one part of Guyana that desperately need to be provided for. All they're asking for is an opportunity. They sent in a couple of captains to see me at Kaikan one time. They walked for 7 days just to make an invitation, an appeal. Could you please come and do for us what you're doing here for them? That was 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years. We are taking definite steps, making decisions to be able to provide for that. Here we are in Venezuela right now, and I was handed by the chief captain, representative for this whole region, I was handed a list of villages, about 200 villages on that list, most of which have no runways, have no access. He's appealing, if we put runways in, could you please provide for us? I believe it is God's will that we move forward immediately with an aviation program right here to reach those hundreds of villages. The result will be tremendous. We must move at the golden moment, and when we do, the results will be incredible. Hundreds of villages here, hundreds of villages across the border, all of them waiting for medical care and the gospel to come. I intend to be part of that group that reaches them. Do you think you would like to be? I know the blessing will be tremendous to you, and I make that appeal to you today. Are you willing to be used by God? Don't just read stories about a faith missionary called David Gates. Experience it yourself. God is willing to do that for you too. God bless you.
Deep in the South American rainforests of the country of Guyana, in regions so remote that they are accessible only by canoe or bush planes, visitors may be surprised to discover whole villages of Amur Indians who have discovered the joy of living the Christian life. How they came to know about Christ is a dramatic fulfillment of the prophecy of Joel, when he said that in those days your old men shall dream dreams.
Many years ago, before I was born, one of the elders of our village had a dream. In that dream, a being full of light told the elder about the creation of the world, about the Sabbath day, about the plan of salvation, and the second coming of Jesus. You must get ready, the angel said. Very soon a white man will come to your village carrying a black book. He will teach you more about these things.
The villagers accepted the teachings of the Black Book and were so happy that Elder Davis had come to teach them that they adopted his name and are now known as the Davis Indians. Since that time, other missionaries have also worked among the Davis Indians. But in the late 1960s, a new communistic-style government took power in Guyana, and the missionaries had to leave. Only recently has the way opened up again for the Davis Indians through the ministry of David Gates.
We took the whole family, all our children, all 5 kids, and we moved into 200 miles into the jungles of Guyana. It was a scary experience, I can tell you. I felt like I had jumped off of a cliff because we were not receiving paychecks anymore. And we wanted to experience what George Mueller, what Hudson Taylor had experienced. God providing. We would not raise funds, we would just work, and if we went hungry, we would go home, if God was unable to take care of our needs. Well, the 1 year that we dedicated to do that has now stretched into 4 years, and God has been faithful. One of the difficult points about Guyana is its isolated areas. Guyana has very few roads. Its rivers are filled with rapids and with waterfalls. So you can't really navigate very far by water. And you have these high mountains that look kind of like Monument Valley, little mountains sticking straight up all over the place, separating big canyons and rivers and so on, and little villages tucked down inside the canyons. The rivers that wind through these canyons are filled with little villages, very tight runways, and it takes a specialized aircraft prepared for bush flying with a big engine and a special wing to be able to land on these short strips. It's hazardous flying. It's certainly not for novice or new pilots. But God has been very kind to us, and He's allowed us to reach a lot of these villages, and the word has spread throughout all of Guyana. It's the only aviation program in the country that is not a non-commercial basis. There are probably at least 70 villages in Guyana's interior that can only be reached by an airplane. Medical care, education is very difficult to achieve. The impact is tremendous. We go in when they call for help, for emergencies. I'm a registered nurse, so I provide primary care, emergency care, then I fly them to the government hospital. We bring them back after they're better, after they've received medical care.
Emelita Thompson lives in Parima with her 6 children. In 1998, she became very ill. The local clinic in the village did not know what was wrong and could not help her.
Elder Gates examined me and determined that I had appendicitis. He took me in his plane to the emergency room at the hospital in Georgetown and worked very hard to help me. He saved my life.
Jesus have done many wonderful things to me to be alive right now. I couldn't eat. I leave all my food. I couldn't drink. I didn't want to drink, or I didn't want to take nothing.
During that time, Brother Gates came over, and I went to talk with him, see if he can help us out to Georgetown. He immediately said, bring her across, and then we'll fly tomorrow. I told him that we don't have any money. He said he will help us.
I couldn't walk. He had to carry me in the wheelbarrow. They had to fetch me out like a small child and put me in the plane. And there I was.
The doctor worked to see the condition of my wife, and even though she was very serious, about to die, they helped her. And whatever need we were in need of, Brother Gates assisted us. So we are very much thankful for Brother Gates, the service that he is doing.
I'm very happy for Gates, who really take interest over me to take me to the hospital, and that is why right now I am alive. And I say thank you to God to send a man like Elder Gates to help Amerindians in this community.
One of our strengths is student missionaries. There's something about living on the front lines and trusting God for the very food that you eat that changes your life. Southern Adventist University has been the one institution that has taken on this project with enthusiasm. Last year they sent 5. This year we have 6. But I got a feeling that very soon we'll be having 10. Perhaps you, as a college student, would be interested in serving as a student missionary. If you have that opportunity, and if God calls you, choose some place in the world. It doesn't have to be Guyana. Maybe it can be Africa, Europe, Asia, but wherever it is, take the advantage to become a student missionary for 1 year. Change the world. Take the risk. Launch out and do the unheard of. That's where all the fun is. That's where all the reward is. Job satisfaction is the highest among our group. We have a very wonderful team of missionaries. Very close, very spiritual. We want the best of the best. God's work deserves the best. If you feel called to do that, and you know God is stirring your heart to do that, I would like to invite you to be a student missionary. I know the blessing will be tremendous to you, and I make that appeal to you today. Are you willing to be used by God? Don't just read stories about a faith missionary called David Gates. Experience it yourself. God is willing to do that for you too. God bless you.